Hey there, self-care warriors. Welcome back to Self-Care Haven. If you didn't notice, this is a new camera that I'm working with. So I might be adjusting some things here and there. Uh, but I wanted to make a video today about a common misconception in the abuse survivor community, well, really outside of it, and that is this idea that we have to coddle abusers in order to seem like compassionate people. Now, my latest article got a lot of feedback, so it has almost 4 million views right now, and that happened within a matter of days. I've never had an article go viral that quickly. So, as you can probably imagine, I got not only a flood of support, but also a lot of people whose reactions to the article seemed as if it may have hit a nerve, and that's perfectly okay with me because I think it's important that we start a revolution. I think it's important that it's discussed. I think it's important to start this dialogue about narcissistic abuse. And for people who are coming in with these kind of countering opinions, I do want to address it because I think that it is bringing up a lot of misconceptions about abuse survivors, and a lot of these people are not doing it in a way that's polite, to say the least. I'm sugarcoating this. I'm so used to trolling and cyberbullying that I've almost become desensitized to it in a sense, but it definitely still affects me from time to time because you wonder, how can someone be that cruel? How can someone be that rageful? But the funny part is that I'm the one being accused of being angry, because my article, I guess, was a little bit too in your face about the fact that abusers use these manipulation tactics. And I find that hilarious because, first of all, I'm telling the truth. Second of all, my stylistic choices of words should not be some sort of signal for you to go into my history and try to find out where I'm coming from. It's just so weird to me. I mean, there are some trolls who actually went so far as to look into my biography, copy and paste it into. It was just so weird for me to see all of that. I was just like, it's just an article. Get over yourself, you know? Seriously, it is an article that is meant to help survivors to learn the manipulative tactics, learn to heal from them, and set boundaries. And I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't see anything wrong with that. And as we've talked about in the community before, and as Shrinking Violet has said so eloquently, there is a difference between accountability and stigma, right? So when we hold our abusers accountable for their actions, we are not stigmatizing them. We are exposing the manipulative tactics that many abusers get away with every day. And by doing that, we help another survivor to heal. We help to validate someone who may be in a toxic relationship. And by continuing to expose those tactics, we are showing the most amount of compassion, not only to abuse survivors, but also to abusers. How? Because the only way that an abuser will ever change is if they are being held accountable. It's not coddling them with compassion and empathy. It's not coddling them to the point where we are forgetting our own self care. It's not letting them get away with their abuse. And I don't think many people who haven't been narcissistically abused understand this. That's not the way the world works. There are serious manipulators out there, some of them without any conscience or remorse. If you think a narcissistic abuser is bad, think about the people with antisocial traits, the people with antisocial personality disorder who don't even have the capacity for remorse. And these all these disorders really overlap, so you could be a very malignant narcissist who has antisocial traits as well. And I'm not trying to, again, invalidate anyone who has been through a really horrific experience with an abusive narcissist. But I'm just saying that there are definitely levels, to the point where this type of abuse can be very malignant and covert and insidious. And because it's so insidious, it's really important for us to expose it, right? So another thing that came up with my article was that people were saying, oh, well, everyone does this. I mentioned in the beginning of the article that we all, can exhibit some traits or behaviors in certain contexts, but narcissists use these tactics in order to silence you and divert you to an excessive extent. So this is a chronic pattern of behavior for them. This is a behavior that is used abusively, it's used deliberately, it's used maliciously against their victims, and it's used to destroy the victim's life. So it's very interesting to me when someone tries to paint me as somewhat bitter about narcissists or angry about narcissists, when in fact I'm just trying to spread awareness of this issue because it's so important, because it affects so many lives around the world. And it's very interesting to me, if you go to the comment section of the article, you can see all of these people who are trying to divert from the article itself and trying to place the focus back on me. And I find that very interesting because they are exemplifying the very diversion tactics that I'm talking about, right? They don't want abusers to be held accountable for their actions. They want us to feel pity for them so that they can continue to get away with their abuse. And I'm sure many of you have experienced this with your own abusers, the pity ploys, oh, well, I'm suffering and I deserve to abuse you. I am justified in abusing you because I'm suffering. All of us suffer in some way, and I'm not trying to discredit anyone who's suffering from trauma. At the same time, survivors of abuse, and this type of abuse especially, suffer from lifelong trauma. They can suffer from lifelong trauma. There's been people who've been driven to suicide because of this type of covert abuse. So before you come on there into that platform and tell me you're not being compassionate enough, how is speaking the truth not being compassionate? I'm speaking the truth so that we can show compassion towards the people who really need it. And those are abuse survivors, okay? The people on the lower end of the narcissistic spectrum who want to change and are willing to change, I have no kind of rage towards them. I have no anger towards them. I really hope that they do change. Honestly, I hope that we are wrong about the fact that narcissists can't change. Because in my experience and in the experience of many mental health professionals, they often don't. They drop out of therapy or they become narcissistically injured when they are in the therapy space. They tend to manipulate their therapists, especially if it's a couples therapist, into believing that their victim is the one who is the abuser. So the fact that these people are manipulative, even in the sites where they are supposed to be treated and helped, tells me a lot about malignant narcissists, the ones who are at the extreme end of the spectrum and who do maliciously hurt, who do maliciously manipulate and demean. I think there can be a space for feeling empathy and compassion if it's for someone who is willing to change and is willing to go to treatment. Unfortunately, many narcissists aren't willing to change. Their excessive sense of entitlement, their excessive sense of superiority, basically disables them from having that sort of self-awareness or insight into the fact that they would even want to change because they benefit from their exploitative behavior. So I hope that, speaking the truth doesn't get confused with being bitter or rageful or somehow wounded from this experience, because for those of you who do know my story, I've used everything that I've experienced as well as the research that I've done into this topic, and I've used the stories of survivors themselves. In my book, you'll not only get articles by licensed therapists and experts in this topic who resonate with what I'm talking about, but also the stories and insights of survivors around the world who have experienced such similar tactics, that it's really important to continue to spread this truth, continue to spread this message, and don't let anyone label you as bitter or angry because you are simply speaking the truth. And just for any commenters out there, know that the way that I write doesn't necessarily represent my feelings in terms of, if I say something like mind effery, which I'm not going to say this full word here, but if I say something like mind effery, it's not that I'm being angry when I say that. I say it because it's kind of like a fresh, in your face, hey, got your attention. That's what good writers do. They capture their readers' attention. And I think that a lot of survivors resonate with my work for that very reason, because I go into not only the manipulative tactics, but the impact that those tactics have on the abuse survivor, and they resonate with the reality of that abusive experience. So I'm not going to stop writing in a stylistic way just because it offends you. I'm going to continue with my work. I'm going to continue speaking the truth, and I'm not going to coddle abusers because we have enough of that already in society. We have enough victim blaming in society. And again, Do I have to reiterate this point? The National Domestic Violence Hotline does not excuse an abuser's behavior based on their disorder. Because the abuser can don a false mask, they reason that the abuser can also control their behavior. They are under conscious control. That behavior is under their conscious control. And if you've ever read any of Lundy Bancroft's books about abusers and alcoholics and addicts who happen to have these traits of narcissism along with their addiction, they knew exactly what they were doing when they were abusing. They knew it. So don't come to me and tell me, well, you need to feel more compassion. You need to acknowledge the suffering of these individuals. I'm not saying that they don't have suffering, but I think that most of their suffering is very self-absorbed. And I think that as a society, we need to move away from this coddling abuser mentality because the only way to really target this issue and unravel covert abuse is to expose it. It is to expose it and to hold abusers accountable for their actions. That's the only way we're ever going to get any change in this society. So I hope this video helps to validate you, empower you, and inspire you to continue speaking the truth about narcissistic abuse and any type of abuse that you feel is, understated or not really talked about as much in society. I hope to talk to you guys soon. If you want to check out the article that I'm talking about below, I'll leave a link in the description. Just a warning, there may be some victim blaming, trolls down there. But that's what happens when something reaches a lot of people. There's always going to be naysayers, and there's always going to be people who are continuing to divert and use the same diversion tactics that I talk about in order to get away from the truth and in order to stop people from exposing this type of covert abuse. Because a lot of those people who are trying to divert benefit from abusing. They benefit from continuing with that agenda of not having their abuse exposed, because the more people feel sympathy and empathy and forgive their abusers, the more likely the cycle will continue, and the more likely that that person will continue to go back to their abuser thinking, well, they will change because as long as I love them enough or feel compassion or feel as much empathy as I need to, they will change, and often they don't. So that is the truth. It's not stigma, it's accountability. And I hope you guys resonate with this truth. If not, you do you. If you want to feel as much compassion and forgiveness towards your abuser, fine. That's not my, that's not me to say what you should do with your own philosophy on life. However, I will tell you that I hope that you prioritize your self-care over an abuser and what the abuser needs. I hope that for all of you, whether you've been a survivor or not. And I hope that there's more empathy and compassion for the people who really need it, abuse survivors. I'll talk to you guys soon, and leave me your comments and your insights below. Until then, have a great weekend and take care.